Hello. I can't see or hear you. Hello?
Hello. Okay, good. Hiya. How are you doing?
Many thanks to those of you who've joined us early. We're just waiting for the presenters all to be online, and we'll kick off the session at past, so in about 8 minutes time. Many thanks. In the meantime, if you want to put any points or any ideas or questions or thoughts into the chat, or feel free to do so. Please put your name and your school ideally, so we can capture those ideas as well. Thank you.
Hi, Becky. And Gemma.
Hello, welcome.
Hi.
I will disappear and I'll unmute myself when it begins, don't worry.
No worries at all. It's nice to see your face. Hi, Beck.
Hi.
Hiya, Becky. Lovely to see you.
Yeah, you too. It's all very strange.
Rampant nerves, belly of butterflies.
Three of my children have Zoom lessons every day. So I have about 5 or 6 sessions between the three of them. Literally, I don't think I've ever been so busy.
That's fantastic.
No. The little one is 4 and they're doing phonics yesterday and they're doing Z. And he went Zoom.
Fair enough. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Mine don't have any online lessons. It's all worksheets and things, which, you know, one level it would be nice for them to have a bit more interaction, but I don't think our house broadband would take it with the amount that I'm on Zoom and my husband's on Zoom in the other room. I think if there was 2 children on it too, there's absolutely no chance.
We have a schedule on the fridge, so there's a lot of negotiations going on.
Hi, Nikki.
Hi Becky, how you doing?
On here again.
Can't stay
Hi,
away.
Naomi.
Can't stay
Yeah,
away.
exactly. Hi, Sam.
Hiya.
Hi, Jackie. Hi. Hi, Emma.
Hi.
Oh, hello, hi. Hi, Naomi. See you there. Your face popped up again. Hi, Sally. I've just found the people at the bottom of my list. There's so many of you. I only saw some of the faces.
Okay, hi everyone. I think it's 3:30 now, so we can make a start. Can I just ask that everybody kind of mutes themselves, our presenters particularly, and then as and when we come to you, you can unmute yourself to speak. So welcome to all our presenters and audience to this ORC All-Party Parliamentary Group evidence session, particularly for teachers. Thank you for joining us on what is a gorgeously sunny day. We really appreciate you being here. I'm Gemma Carroll. I'm the inquiry coordinator for the ORC All-Party Parliamentary Group, which is made up of MPs and peers from across the political parties. They launched an inquiry as they were concerned that ORC is being undervalued in our education system, and therefore that many children are missing out. So the inquiry is really aiming to explore ways to better support teachers and schools to prioritise ORC. And to do that, I guess they want to understand the barriers that teachers are facing in doing so. So they're looking to make recommendations to government and other educational bodies, and really kind of understand that there are measures that can be adopted and kind of recommended at a national level. And they also want to make recommendations to school leaders. So this seemed like a really good opportunity that everybody's kind of now on Zoom so much that we could collect the testimony of many of you kind of expert ORC teachers out there. And thank you for our wider audience joining as well. We hope you'll post your comments in the chat. Particularly given the current circumstances, MPs want to ensure that we are addressing the immediate needs and the long-term needs of children and young people, affected by school closures as well. So that's something that I hope we can bring into the discussion today. So I'm going to hand you over now to Becky, Director of Voice 21, who is kindly chairing the session for us today, and she will kind of go through the format and be introducing the speakers. So thank you for joining us.
Well, welcome everybody. As Gemma said, it's fantastic to have you all here and also to have an audience of people listening. Please, those of you who aren't giving evidence directly in this session, do participate. As Gemma said, we'd love to have your questions, thoughts, any links, any follow-up ideas on the back of what the teachers who are giving evidence say would be really helpful in terms of adding to our understanding and building up more evidence for the inquiry. And there's certainly lots of opportunities to engage in the inquiry both during this time but afterwards as well. So we would love to have more submissions, and we'd love to have opportunities to take more evidence in the future, and all of that is really, really helpful in terms of making sure this is as rich a process as possible. And on that, we're absolutely delighted to have 11 teachers joining us to give evidence directly. I think one of the key things about this inquiry is that we really are trying to be broad and bringing all of the voices, which is obviously very apt considering the subject of the inquiry, and to make sure that those voices are heard. And, you know, as Emma Hardy said on launching the inquiry, you know, oracy is as important in our classrooms as it is in the corridors of Westminster, and it's really important that that voice from both the classroom and in schools is heard really loud and clear as part of this inquiry. So we're delighted to have you all here. What we will do is I will go through you one by one in terms of the 11 teachers who are giving evidence. Please, as you've been warned already, do try to keep to time. We've got a lot to get through, and we do want an opportunity at the end, hopefully, to reflect on some of the points made and perhaps draw in some of the points that are given on the chat. So yes, please do stick to time, and hopefully we'll cover quite a range of topics. As Gemma said, we're looking across both kind of what's happening in practice in classrooms and what can help to support that even further, the impact of particular situations such as COVID and how we can ensure that oracy is sustained as a priority, and that it gets the attention it deserves, and both now but maybe more importantly when students return to school. And then also looking at the future and also the key issues around social mobility, and the importance of oracy for particular students making progress within school. So we'll pick up on all of those different themes, but to kick us off, I'm going to invite Naomi Henner, who is a teacher of science at Northampton School for Boys and an original oracy leader from Voice 21, did our original programme to start off by giving her evidence. So over to you, Naomi, and thanks very much.
Hello, hopefully, I'll be able to share my screen in a second. So I'm going to talk to you not about the whole curriculum, but just about my own work at Northampton School for Boys in chemistry, specifically practical chemistry. I don't know why this doesn't want to behave, bear with me. So what happened to begin with was I became aware, as indeed many teachers of science are, that the cognitive load imposed by practical chemistry is so great that students can't really learn. So pre-laboratory preparation has been shown to improve learning. So before my students undertake any practical work, they're asked to watch procedures video beforehand. The first thing that we did, the first iteration of work that I've done, involved asking Year 12 students to film each other, explaining and demonstrating a laboratory technique. Although this work reported positive effective outcomes, it did, however, identify a need to develop oracy skills. Students lacked the ability to explain themselves. They found it difficult to use the correct vocabulary, and indeed it identified the lack of opportunities to develop metacognition. This led on to further work involving GCSE students. The GCSE students were not happy about filming each other. So instead, I took influence from Lindor's talking points and replaced a written laboratory method sheet with a prompt slide. And the students had to discuss their method to carry out the experiment. Now, what was interesting about this work was that it actually reported a positive, statistically significant increase in students' retention of the methodology. Okay, so the test group was the neutralization experiment, and the students showed a significant improvement in their retention of the method. However, I did identify the fact that the lab work and indeed the talk still lacked structure. So taking influence from the Voice 21 and RSE Cambridge talk roles, I developed laboratory roles. This incorporated specific roles for carrying out the task and protocols for talking throughout the task. Before they could carry out the experiment, they were asked to construct a storyboard. You can see here, they had to discuss the steps and be able to explain why. Now, this procedure has shown statistically significant improvement in student outcomes, student attainment, compared to groups that have not adopted these roles and not adopted the storyboard. This leads me on to the present study, which involves Key Stage 3 students, where I'm mapping the communication across practical work so that I can understand what actually is happening, and building on the earlier work, I'm hoping to be able to develop an RSE practical pro forma so that other people can adopt this approach and work effectively. So I have been fortunate enough to identify in my small case studies statistically significant improvements in retention and in performance in tests. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Naomi. So that's a really clear example of the impact of RSE in the classroom in one particular setting. I think, you know, teases up in terms of thinking about not only the wider societal benefits and the issues around confidence, etc., that we talk about a lot in terms of students and RSE, but also that really direct impact on learning, and in a subject area which isn't one that's traditionally associated with talk in science. So thank you so much for that. It's a fantastic start. Okay, so next up we have Sally Miner, from head teacher of Riders Hayes School. Sally, can you hear us? Handing over to you. Naomi, are you able to stop sharing your screen? Just 1 second, I'll just see. Oh, brilliant, fantastic, thank you. Over to you, Sally, thanks.
Thank you. Okay. I'm just sharing my screen now with you, hopefully, so that should be working. Thank you. So, yes, I'm Sally Miner, head teacher at Riders Hayes Primary Academy in Walsall. We're a large single academy converter teaching school in 2011. We have 520 pupils aged 2 to 11 and are about national average deprivation. We have two key projects which particularly excited us and shaped our thinking about RSE. The one being the Language First project, a school improvement funded programme by the DFE for a number of schools across the Black Country, and the other being taking part as a strategic partner in Voice Black Country, one of Voice 21's local areas. We developed our vision for RSE with all our stakeholders, and very much felt that this was a vehicle for learning, absolutely intrinsic to everything that we do, but also giving children good mental health and looking after their well-being as rounded young citizens too, and actually having the potential to have really life-changing effects. It all needs to begin in early years, and that's why we've devoted so much time to our project Closing the Word Gap in Early Years, where we've supported 32 schools across the Black Country to do that, working with partners at University of Oxford, and developing 15 excellent schools as a sustainable model. And then also fascinated by the work of School 21, we were delighted to become a local voice area and develop that community of practice too in tandem. And I think Peter Hyman's chart here just sums everything up, and this is what we feel RSE is really all about. In the classroom then, we feel that we need building blocks. Intentional teaching of RSE, it can't happen by osmosis. And in terms of early years particularly, that role of the adult is most definitely the most powerful tool in setting up the rules of language, the conventions, the sentence structure, looking at the precision, the turn taking, and all those conventions. So we looked at how our children learn language and how to support them best. And through the Language First project and the early research from University of Oxford, used the language learning principles. Being a language radiator, modelling rich language, unusual words, new words, commenting, reading aloud, being a language magnet, so helping children to feel noticed, being an active listener, a responsive language partner, confirming, repeating, extending communication. And then the conversationalist, the back and forth of language, the multiple turns, the commenting, the questions, the explaining, the speculating, and the adding information. These, we felt, were the key and have been major factors in our success. In terms of those tools then, tools for talk. Children need to know how to talk, and that has to be taught. We need those building blocks for RSE, always stretching vocabulary just above the pitch of that class, exploring meanings of words, the refining of language, rehearsing in a variety of contexts that permeate the curriculum, absolutely key. Giving these irresistible context for learning, not just in early years, which will then give our children these tools for life. And we also realised that that content for talk was absolutely key too. Children have got to have something to talk about, and that's where cultural capital really comes in, so that a broad and balanced mastery curriculum will actually give children the knowledge that they then have the confidence to convey. This is just an example of something we're working on at the moment, which we're calling our knowledge maps, and that other schools are doing similar things, where we have knowledge categories to link learning. And one of those in particular, let's talk, so that we always identify the language that can be used within that topic and links made through to others. We're finding this quite a useful and powerful tool too. And we know that children need the conviction to talk. We don't want passive learners in the classroom. We want all our children to have something to say. We want them to be heard, and we want them to hear the opinions of others and be open-minded. And so these building blocks, we feel strongly, are our children's meal ticket. Skills for life, for their world of work, and also for social mobility. Looking at how schools themselves then can shape this RSE curriculum, then again, leadership has to be visible, it has to be whole school, and it must involve all stakeholders, looking at the whole school strategies for planning for talk, the purpose for talk, that RSE framework and discussion guidelines. And at the heart of that is a bespoke curriculum. This is a model of our curriculum where the drivers exploring, building, creating possibilities, independence and resilience, we feel have RSE at the very heart of them. And when we're looking at what teachers then need to do in the classroom, it's about that willingness to change, to take risks, to examine the school day through a different lens, to plan in those opportunities for talk, the focus on vocabulary, not just in the classroom, but in assemblies and beyond. Every opportunity for precision modelling of language and that enjoyment of the exploration of language. And we believe that oracy is indeed the most powerful and probably most life-changing gift we can give our children at primary. And that's why I wanted to share this with you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sally. That was really fantastic to hear about how comprehensive your approach has been right the way from early years throughout all of the thinking of the school curriculum and how that then comes to life in lessons. So it was really interesting to show how many things you've woven together to create that whole school approach to oracy and to ensure that it does have the impact that we hope it will in terms of children's life chances. So thank you so much for that. Brilliant. If you could stop sharing your screen for a second. Brilliant, thank you. Excellent. And I will hand over to Emma Barker, who's head of school and formerly an oracy lead from Paulet Primary School Academy. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you. As you know, my name's Emma Barker. I'm the head of a very, very small rural primary school at the moment. I am still the oracy lead because in our small primary school there is actually only 56 children currently, so I'm kind of leading all of it currently. Anyway, just to give you an idea of what we've been up to and where we go from here. I'm also part of the Priory Learning Trust, which is a multi-academy trust. So we do have dealings with children from 2.5 all the way through to 18. And we're kind of on the very start of our journey in that respect with our oracy, and me kind of firmly leading it currently from a primary school perspective. And I'm working really closely with our secondary colleagues, but I'll get onto that a little bit in a minute. I'm kind of focusing this afternoon on how I feel that oracy can actually play a part, one of the questions, play a part in supporting our reintegration of students during this, albeit incredibly strange times that we've had. So I did put that question out to my primary and secondary colleagues and senior leadership teams across all schools as well. And overwhelmingly, what's come back is allowing children, giving children those time to be able to digest what is happening at the moment. And one of the ways to enable that reintegration is not only fostering that time for oracy skills to be developed, it's bearing in mind that then children may have had the most wonderful experience and conversely the most horrific experience at the moment, and it's kind of managing that all together. And I think this is an incredibly valuable time that oracy can pull that all together. Somebody came back to me with a fantastic quote, which I can't claim this is my own, but they said, throughout these strange times, language will be our only real connection. Therefore, language needs to work harder than before, which I think is really powerful actually, and something to really think about. So that's one of the things that we're gonna sort of focus on in terms of our curriculum if we should open it in the next week or so. How we can also use our vocabulary learning in this. A lot of the words that are coming around at the moment are very new words to children, and they may not really understand them. Suddenly we're talking about pandemic, we're talking about risk, we're talking about social distancing. It's a whole kind of new vocabulary for children to learn, and understanding what that then might mean to them, and for them to be able to absorb that, share their ideas. And when we talk about the word safe quite a lot, but actually the message of keeping them safe has a connotation that perhaps if we didn't do it, they'd be unsafe. So it's kind of unpicking all that side of it as well. I think the other area that's important, I think, for oracy in this time specifically, is it will help build a level of empathy, which I think is really important for children to understand. We've all been impacted by this situation. Every single one of us in some shape or form has been impacted. And I think when children start coming back together to be able to share thoughts and feelings and solutions to problems, that they will not feel quite so alone with it, will be absolutely vital. The other area that I'm going to talk about now is then moving on is how we can embed this into our schools generally. Pandemic or not, I think it's vitally important. We wouldn't be all here today talking about this if we didn't believe so. But for me and my team, this has been a real fantastic opportunity to kind of reassess our curriculum and think what is the most important things we need to teach them. Above and beyond that, kind of comes back to me is the crux of it is our values and our ethos. And if we have that passion and that belief in how important it is, and building it into our curriculum and planning it into our curriculum, will be absolutely crucial and a fantastic opportunity in that sense. I think for children and for teachers and for anyone involved with this, for them to understand, and parents, the community, to understand and appreciate the power of talking and listening. That power is absolutely vital beyond the classroom walls. It's for life. Us here right now talking about it is really powerful. We've seen things on the news. It's powerful. If you know how to use your voice, you know how to share your opinions, build on your opinions, it's incredibly powerful for your life, and also for any social injustice work as well, will come in incredibly importantly. In order to do that, I think we do need to, as I said, it's a sort of start of our journey. But what I've done with my team is literally gone back to the national curriculum and said, look, what can we teach through Oracy that will make it even more impactful? And therefore it comes down to the planning of it, those explicit opportunities. It's a bigger picture than we're going to do some group work, we're going to do a debate. It's much bigger than that, and now's the time then to start embedding that in and planning it and giving it the value. So if the senior leadership team or the head teachers all give it that value, give it that prominence, it will form a much stronger basis for the curriculum going forward. One thing that's come out of this situation, which has been really positive for our trust, we've actually got some media centres. They're called the Jill Dando Media Centres, and our whole premise behind it is sharing good news. There's an awful lot of bad news about, not only now, just generally. So our Jill Dando Media Centre has been putting together Zoom meetings like this, and children have been given the opportunity to interview, respond to, listen to different advice from different people from all over, all different industries. We've had England rugby players, we've had people from Aardman Animations, we've had authors, we've had TV presenters, we've got MPs on Friday, which is fantastic. And that's been children from across primary school right the way through to our secondary school and sixth form age have had that opportunity. Not only has that been a great experience for them, I think now we can use that as a fantastic training tool for other children to be able to learn from it in the future. So there's me rattling on. No PowerPoints from me, I'm afraid. I wasn't that organised to do that. I've been in school today just to sort out everything going on with the children that we've got in. So it's back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emma, and a great demonstration of Oracy regardless of props and presentations. Fantastic. Thank you so much. And again, a great explanation of the power of Oracy and why as head teachers and school leaders particularly, I think it's really important that it's focused on and given the attention that perhaps some of us would argue it hasn't over time. So thanks very much for that. Just to say that there is lots of people putting questions and ideas into the chat, so please do go on and respond. Great to have a bit of debate going on the side as well as the presentations up front. So yeah, please do go and visit the chat and put your thoughts and respond to any of the ideas that are there at the moment. I'm now going to hand over to Jackie Latham, who is Oracy lead at Bolton Youth Challenge Prue, and Bolton Youth Challenge Prue, we're delighted are part of our Get Talking in Prue's project, and so it's brilliant to have Jackie here. Thank you, Jackie, over to you.
Thank you. Just going to put us in context a little so you know where we're coming from. So Youth Challenge Primary is a small provision. It serves up to 24 pupils from Key Stage 2 across the local authority. Those pupils are the ones that are at risk of permanent exclusion. We're part-time, 2 days a week, short stay provision. We adopt an early intervention model of support to enable children to remain successful where they belong in their mainstream school setting, wherever possible. Pupils attending our unit have social, emotional, mental health or behavioural difficulties, which is becoming a barrier to their learning in their mainstream primary schools. In the primary bit, I am the one and only teacher in the unit, supported ably by our lead and by 4 learning mentors, but we do work very closely with Youth Challenge Secondary, who are our upstairs model. So, like Becky says, we were very fortunate this year to be successful in an application in joining Voice 21 in their pilot project, Get Talking Improves. We've developed our journey with them this year. We really felt that in the growing digital age, with more children who entered our provision displaying undiagnosed speech and language issues, it became apparent obviously needed to be that priority. The need to prioritise was thankfully recognised by every member of the staff team, as well as having an individual action plan written for it. It was part of our whole school development plan. So for Oracy to be that higher priority, it cannot just be the job of one person, it has to go throughout. Every aspect of our school day involves an element of Oracy. We must therefore give the children tools to pick from to participate. It needs to be developed not to support children in their academic life, but in life beyond school. Every child we work with needs to help to find their own voice and has a right to be heard, and we really felt that that was a priority this year. So for us, like in everything we do, modelling was key. We can't expect a child to do a calculation or write steps in a sentence if they don't know what it looks like. They need a success criteria. So for Oracy, we use the same approach, and we use that for modelling. Modelling language for every part of the school day or social situation for us became key. Sentence stems to help them formulate what they want to say and enable children to express themselves. We need the support to find our children's voice, and we need to give them the tools to do that. We do some joint projects through from the primary to the secondary. So the secondary children have adult models for them, and the secondary pupils have then become primary pupils models. We have mapped out our strands within the Oracy framework and use that in the classroom and beyond to give our children a rich language experience. Our curriculum is designed to develop Oracy knowledge and skills, and that goes not just what is taught within the classroom each day, but what is taught in the corridors and beyond. We need to give our children the tools to agree and disagree respectfully, so that they realise that an idea is fine, it can be justified in what you're saying. No idea is a wrong idea. The staff in the unit are really good at using discussion rules in lessons. It gives children the confidence to join in and time to process what is being said. Lots of opportunities there then to find out about characters, discuss a book, explain how they got an answer to a calculation, and reason about whether they are right or wrong. For us, during the current COVID-19 situation, we've continued to encourage our children to record their opinions in relation to a weekly Oracy task published on our social media or learning platforms. For us, weekly phone calls have highlighted a problem with the Oracy for the children. They're unsure about turn taking and how to be aware when it's their turn to speak. Even when we use video links like this and they can see others, it's become apparent they struggle to see those social cues and they aren't sure how to take turns in conversations. So for us, when we return, Oracy will be front and centre to our approach in supporting our pupils. Some of our pupils will have been starved of language and discussion, and giving children opportunities to express their thoughts and feelings will become so important. At the moment, we're adapting and altering the curriculum that we will deliver to the children on their return, offering more opportunities to develop their Oracy skills and to give them time to understand their thoughts and feelings. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jackie. I think it's really powerful to hear for those specific students the kind of the range of things you're doing in terms of both building up their social and emotional skills through Oracy, but also that how that applies to their academic learning as well, and particularly then from your point of view about preparing them to be able to have to engage really effectively in learning and school and beyond their time with you. So thank you so much for that. Now, so rattling through, sorry, I would love to talk more and unpick what everybody's saying, but we've got a lot of people to get through, and then we can go back to particular points at the end. So I'm now going to hand over to Chetan Rajani from Madani Federation in Leicester, If you want to find out more about that school, we've got a great video that's linked from the Voice 21 website, where you can watch a lot more about what they've been up to on Oracy. But Tatum, I'm sure will give us a great insight now. So over to you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I enjoyed my 5 minutes of fame. Yeah, as Becky said, I'm from Madani Schools Federation. We have 2 schools, a girls' school and a boys' school. We are a faith school, faith designated school, and we're interested in Oracy precisely because we know the impact it has on our students, not in necessarily just in terms of their direct outcomes like GCSEs, but also in terms of their confidence and having those platforms to speak. Today I'm going to be talking about 2 aspects that the panel's interested in. One will be about the types of classroom talk that we find make a particular difference, and then I'll be moving on to talk about the impact of the closures on our students and how we will use Oracy to progress. So to begin, in terms of the aspects of classroom talk that make a particular difference to our students' learning, we find that having roles in group work helps students to develop and interrogate their own ideas. It also helps in a class discussion or discussions in small groups to help students to share ideas as well. We found previously that maybe students were waiting for their turn to talk, as others have said, whereas this allows students to build on each other's ideas and to share and also develop their listening skills. So we know this is important for their progress, but we also feel that it's important in the world of work, which is part of our vision to prepare students for the next steps. In terms of the other benefits for us, we find that learning through talk helps students to retain a lot more information in their long-term memory. So for our higher retainers, it helps them to refine their ideas. And for our lower prior retainers, it helps for them to trial answers or ask questions in a kind of low stakes manner, in a non-threatening way. So onto the impact of the closures. Firstly, the impact on children's language development and well-being. In our school, we place value on scaffolds to enable high quality talk about complex concepts. Now, obviously at the moment we can of course provide as much as we can towards this, but we know that some of our learners may struggle to access those materials. So our tasks have to be quite straightforward, and they might not always generate that targeted discussion that we see in classrooms, which expands students' vocabulary and develops their knowledge base to the same degree. We also know, given our context, that closures can mean increased stress in economic terms. About a third of our students qualify for pupil premium. And so we know that parents will have competing demands to contend with in trying to support their child with their Oracy tasks. We also know that given that 80% of our students have English as an additional language, some parents may not feel that they have the vocabulary to support discussions in topic areas which require specialist knowledge. But for us, the biggest deficit is actually the human element, not elephant, sorry, human element. So the development and refinement of ideas is the true spirit of Oracy for us. And that's difficult to replicate, although I know all schools are endeavouring to do so. So how can Oracy play a role in supporting students' mental health and social reintegration when we return to schools? We know that articulating feelings and explaining situations will be important. Beyond the headlines of stay at home, we know that there are many stories in all of those homes that we need to explore. We also feel that students will be feeling like they've maybe been in a bit of a vacuum in terms of regular feedback and verbal confirmation of their ideas. So it might be reassuring for them to speak to their teacher and receive encouraging feedback and know that they're on the right track. Finally, I just want to say that the current climate will have impacted the stress of students, as we know, the stress levels. But many students may not feel that they can speak to their family and friends about these issues as they might not about other issues. So for us, when we do return, in whatever form we return, we know that curriculum may have to take a bit of a back seat, and actually we feel that Oracy will be the vehicle through which we will reintegrate students back into their learning. So we'll need to create more opportunities for group discussions and to process this shared experience, and we will also need to organise more individualised mentoring sessions to allow students to process their feelings around bereavement and loss. Thank you so much for your time. We really hope that this helps to increase the profile of Oracy nationally, because we know it makes such a difference in our context. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic, and it really important to hear the direct impact that you're anticipating for your students and seeing now from COVID, and how Oracy can both have a role in doing that, but also is one of the main things that they will have missed out on during this time. And the point you raised about Oracy being the means for reintegration back into school was a point that was raised in a teacher discussion that we had last week by Nikki Pear, who's giving evidence a bit later. And I think it's definitely a theme that's coming to us in the schools that we're talking to, just how important Oracy is going to be in terms of that reintegration. So it's a really great point, well made. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And handing over now to Emma Smith, who's Oracy lead at St Mary's Church of England School up in the North. Thanks, Emma.
Hi, yeah, as Becky's just said, my name's Emma and I'm from St Mary's Primary School in Tunstall. I'm the Oracy leader there, and just to give you a bit of a background of our school, we're in quite a deprived area and have quite a lot of vulnerable children. So we felt that Oracy was really the main thing we wanted to change to improve the outcomes for our children. The first question I'm going to talk about is what aspects of classroom talk make a particular difference to children's learning and outcomes. And for me, after being the Oracy leader for quite some time now, the main three things have been respect, debating and improving language acquisition. First of all, respect. We encourage all our children to stand up while they're talking. So when they're answering and asking questions, we ask them to stand up to gain respect from those people that are around them. All children are required to look at the person who is talking so that they can build on what each other said, respond to them, so you don't get a lot of children saying the same answers and saying the same things over and over again. We also ask our children to speak in sentences just to help them with their writing, as we found a lot of our children couldn't speak it, so then they couldn't write it as well. We found children that listen more closely to what each other says, and they have a newfound respect not just for the children around them, but for the teacher too. They want to listen fully to what the teacher has to say so they can respond in an appropriate way. We have also taken time to teach the children how to debate effectively. They have the chance to talk about issues in a really safe environment. They develop the standard English, and I've finally been able to get it onto the timetable. So they have half an hour of debating every week where they get to build on those skills. We have sentence stems where they can disagree, agree, respond to what each other says, and it's really helped develop their sentence structure too. Language acquisition is what we're looking at the moment. A lot of our children come to school with little or no communication skills. So from early years all the way up to year 6, it really is a big thing to get our children talking. We introduce a range of new language that sometimes might be a bit of a higher level than what they're currently at, but we want to introduce as much as possible. We put it up on the working walls, and they've all got their own dictionary that's empty, and if they come across a word they really like, or topic words or anything they want to use, they add it to their own dictionary so that they can use that as they go on to create new pieces of writing. Moving on now to how can teachers and schools effectively embed Oracy into the classroom. I started off by using a benchmark to see where we were. I found that making small steps was better than big steps because teachers are so busy, and also seeing the effects in my classroom, teachers then wanted to take on those new steps in their own classrooms, especially with our current year 6, who now we're my year 4s, and they can now see a big impact with the way they speak, the way they can debate, and the way they do talk in their own classrooms. I was very persistent as well. I did have the backing from SLT, but I had to almost be the ambassador for Oracy, talking about it all the time, being the enthusiastic one about it, and really being persistent with trying to get it embedded in the school. We just had our current science report review back in November, that took place, and it said that pupils are very articulate and enthusiastic about their learning, and the impact of the Oracy project is evident. They speak confidently, and their perseverance to learn more is really good too. So that was quite good. What are the current barriers to all children receiving high quality Oracy education? For us, it's been time. With such a huge impact in the past on reading, writing and maths, it almost has been impossible to try and fit Oracy into the timetable. Also on the national curriculum, because it's not set per year group, it's only set by what the children need to achieve by the end of year 6. It was really hard for teachers to see what they actually needed to teach them. So we've created a progression document from nursery to year 6, which shows teachers explicitly what they need to be teaching their children. Being in a deprived area also, poor oracy skills, it's been really tricky to get those children up to age-related expectations. And moving on to the last thing I'm going to talk about, what is the impact of school closures on children's language development and the well-being of students? Like I've said before, deprivation is so high in our school, and the vulnerability of children, it has been really hard for some of our children to have that role model, to have that person to talk to. Their teacher may be their only form of communication, their reliable, steady person that they can come into, have a bright smile on their face and talk about their issues and problems. My worry is through lockdown that maybe they haven't had this steady person to talk to. I can think of already some children in my class who, although I've been able to talk to on Dojo, I haven't been able to talk to personally. It might have been just their parents. The possible impacts of this are feeling of loneliness, outbursts of behaviour because they can't talk to someone, a loss of trust in myself or other teachers because they haven't been taught to them. And I really do think when we go back to school, talk is going to be the main thing that will get our children back on track, that will support our children and get them ready to learn. Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, Emma. Brilliant. I mean, I really felt very powerful explanation about the barriers to oracy, but how it's so important that schools overcome those because of how critical it is for the children you serve. So thank you very much. Next up, we have Sam Creighton, who's oracy lead at Elmhurst Primary School. Sam, are you with us? Yeah, I can see him.
I am indeed. Hello.
Brilliant.
Can you see me? Perfect. Hi, so yes, my name's Sam Creighton and I'm the oracy lead at Elmhurst Primary School, which is a primary school in Newham in East London. It's actually the context of my school, which has about 95% of the children speaking English as an additional language, that has really informed both mine and the school's view of the importance and the impact of oracy. We serve a community that often starts below the baseline in terms of their sort of spoken English language, and that has massive impacts in terms of their academic attainment and their social mobility. So we feel that we have a duty as a school to address this. And there's the story of one child that I would like to hone in on, as I think she embodies this particularly well. She arrived at our school from India at the tail end of year 2 and essentially had no English, not to speak, not to read, not to write. Even when she left at the end of year 6 last year, her parents still required translators to communicate with the school. So English was very much not the main language spoken at home. However, due to our school's focus on oracy, that's on confidence, on eloquence, on language comprehension, and by the time she left us, she had performed the lead role in an original language Shakespeare production, and she had captained a debating squad that was ranked 2nd in the country by DebateMate. Now, these sorts of achievements, I guess, are a recognition of the benefit brought by a focus on oracy, rather than the benefit itself, which was very much how she was able to flourish academically, socially, and emotionally. And yes, I accept this is an example which goes from one extreme to the other. The general trend is actually one that's quite common in our school. Of the children who join us in EYFS, the vast majority are below national expectations in terms of their speech development. And this is true as well of many of our later joiners. And our aim is to support them to grow and develop as scholars, as speakers, and as citizens. And we found this has had a huge benefit because of our focus on oracy. In terms of academics, for example, obviously it was said by Britain that reading and writing floats on a sea of talk. And if we look at the SATs results for reading in Key Stage 1, last year they were 82%. In Key Stage 2, they were 92%. So these cohorts that started behind the curve have now moved ahead of the curve in terms of meeting national expectations. And this is supported by obviously a large and growing library, which research which identifies oracy as both a key factor in and a brilliant outcome of this sort of development. But how can we structure that in terms of best practice to support both our teachers and all of our students to develop with their spoken ability? The first thing that we found to be particularly true is that you have to view oracy in 2 particular ways. The first is that it can't be isolated in individual classrooms. It has to be seen as a joined up whole school approach. And secondly, and maybe most importantly, it shouldn't be seen as a checklist of things to teach, but rather a way of approaching teaching. This is because, like reading and writing, speaking is not a single skill, but rather a confluence of many skills which needs to be woven together and then through everything that we do. and teachers then need to be helped in adapting their pedagogy appropriately. I think this should really start with their initial teacher training, but it must carry on through their whole career with CPD tailored to meet the challenges of their particular school, because each school will have different considerations and different challenges to overcome when it comes to developing their children's oracy. And as well as recognising and developing this pedagogy, it also has to be about prioritising it. And this ties into the other consideration, which is that it can't just be about individual teachers. It needs to be part of a whole school approach, not just as a decoration or a cherry on top of the curriculum, but really as a cornerstone of it that's been laid down and built upon by leadership. It has to start at the top. And again, this begins in EYFS with a really strong focus on early language development, and that's made a huge impact to us with our EAL learners. But this must be a continued prioritisation of oracy across the curriculum and throughout all key stages. Most notably for us, that's been through consistent and structured partner talk, group work and whole class discussions. And like lots of people have mentioned today already, there's a lot of considerations in making this productive in terms of having freedom of expression, but also with well communicated structures and roles and expectations to make sure the speaking is productive. And then this classroom activity really should be supplemented by oracy-based enrichment opportunities. That's been so valuable to us. At our school, we found real success with Debate Mate and debating clubs. They've been amazing for us. Or drama productions through the Shakespeare Schools Foundations have been really effective. And we've had speech making competitions, poetry retreats, all of which have come together to help develop the students. Many of which, as I said, have started off with very poor language, spoken language development at the start, really help them develop and become engaged in their learning and as citizens growing up. But it also must not stop with the students. We do a lot of work engaging with parents as well, doing oracy-based homeworks where children go and collect their family's oral histories, for example. It was a recent history project we did, which was so enriching. And we often get parents in as well to school to take part in debates in front of the children, and having these family members as oratorial role models is hugely effective and powerful for the children. So it's having this joint approach to the whole community helps engage the whole community and also raise achievement for everyone, particularly our students who are very vulnerable at the start when it comes to their oracy attainment. But we found huge success. Thank you very much. Over back to you.
Thanks so much, Sam. And in the course of what you said, you covered a lot of the key points that are being raised in the chat at the moment. So definitely that idea about oracy not being viewed as a cherry on top, but something that needs to be, as you said, a cornerstone of the curriculum, but then also the importance of extracurricular opportunities in building on that foundation of what happens whole school, to provide students with different contexts and opportunity for stretch and challenge. And then the role of parents and home, and how as schools, and I think that's something that obviously schools are very much focused on at the moment, how can we take what we know is important within the school day and ensure that that is continued beyond and supplemented and supported by what's happening at home. So thanks so much for that, really great covering all of that territory. And now I'm going to hand over to Beck Tulloch up in Salford, in Manchester, or just outside, sorry. It's got its own place, isn't it? I don't want to get into trouble off the Manchester Salford piece. Who is Associate Assistant Head Teacher of St Ambrose Barlow High School. Fantastic. There you go, Beck.
Oh, good afternoon, everybody. I'm not sure whether you can see me. I wanted to be full screen. I hope I am. I want to start by giving you some contextual understanding of the oracy programme at my school. In September of 2016, we joined the oracy EEF research pilot, which had 3 focuses: establishing a discrete oracy curriculum for Year 7, assemblies as an expression of whole school culture, and CPD for staff. Within the next academic year, every student in our school will have had access to this curriculum, where we focus on classroom talk and public speaking. The curriculum culminates as 210 Year 7 students each present a speech in a week we call Embrace: Your Voice, Your Community and Your Future. As the oracy lead, I still contribute oracy sessions to our CPD schedule every half term, which target skills identified by lesson observations. We deliver assemblies every week to each house, and the aim is to use meaningful oracy. Students may be presented with a talking point to stimulate discussion, use pair and share to evaluate its truth, and then report back to the assembly. We have established the connection between strong oracy and strong literacy at our school. The development of these skills is at the foundation of our curriculum. Strong listening and speaking in lessons develops later reading and writing successes. In a survey of our teachers' views on oracies, one responded that you learn to talk and think academically because you write, before you write well academically. Another response, both the learner and the teacher have to understand how talk orders thought and develops understanding. Oracy heightens everyone's ability to do well at our school. Whilst one child's journey might be developing the confidence to speak, another might need to learn to give way to other speakers, to stop dominating and listen. Facilitating productive talk in lessons is a priority for us. Talk that builds and extends knowledge, that builds awareness of the choice of language, form and structure, but also talk that develops young people's self-belief and self-regulation. An NQT who joined us earlier this year reflected that I have found oracy a useful tool and building block for forming the classroom habits and the routines I want to see. Teachers need time to engage with and understand this body of knowledge. Time is the most precious commodity a school manages. Building an in-house expert and oracy lead to coach teachers helps, as does expertise from foundations such as Voice 21. But our head reflects that you have to reduce other demands on teachers to focus on oracy. Indeed, when we introduced oracy, our experienced teachers would say that they do it already or that it was just good teaching, but lesson observations didn't reflect this. Making talk central to learning requires a level of specific and detailed practice, a clinical precision in planning for talk to improve learning, and truthful evaluation of what it achieves. It's complex and it takes time to embed into teachers' practice. I met oracy as a concept 18 years into my career as a teacher, and I would say it is without parallel in improving my practice. By way of an example, an extremely dyslexic student that I taught a couple of years ago went into her final GCSE written exam and came out and said, "Oh, miss, I really enjoyed that exam because I just wrote down what we say in class." The barriers to all children receiving a high-quality oracy education are predominantly to do with context. A school implementing oracy needs to use connected thinking. 4 years into our journey, I can evidence our commitment to oracy in our behaviour policy, wellbeing work, careers support, curriculum and lessons. It gives you a shorthand to develop better learning and better behaviour. The development of our teachers has an unintended consequence. Our teachers sparkle at interview. I've lost count of the number of teachers who've used oracy explicitly in their interview and in their lessons and get a new job. Oracy develops everyone. Accountability measures focus our professional practice in schools, and there's an enduring truth in education that writing carries more value than talk. Disrupting this perception is pivotal in developing oracy, and I can't help thinking that this requires national accountability measures to be framed differently. Oracy is well-being. As we begin to support our teachers into reuniting with our students post-lockdown, oracy will play a fundamental part in bringing us back together as it heightens a community's ability to belong together, to belong to each other, whilst also ensuring individuality is valued. It makes every voice matter. These processes are built on the principles of a democratic society. One of our year 8s reflected for me for this presentation that I have realised from oracy that I have a lot of confidence to speak out and show people who I really am as a person. To conclude, I just want to use the words of my fellow oracy teacher, Claire Chalk. In year 10, the echoes of the oracy curriculum in year 7 are present. Planned talk allows students to think bigger, wider and deeper, And this clearly sets them up to be learners for life. Thanks very much, everybody. Nice to talk to you.
Thanks so much, Beck. And again, if you're interested in the practice at Beck School, there is a great video produced by the Chartered College of Teaching around that. And also I know that there are opportunities for people to watch some of the Embrace talks that are very, very powerful and definitely worth your time watching. Okay, so we are running a little bit over time, you may have noticed. Please stay with us. We have 3 contributions left and they're definitely worth hearing. And please do, as I know many of you are, please put your ideas and thoughts into the chat. But because we're running over, I will head straight over to Nikki Pear, who's a assistant head and RSE lead at Cubitt Town Junior School, and also leads on work across the Tower Hamlets RSE Hub. Over to you, Nikki. Thank you.
Thanks, Becky. Afternoon, everybody. I'll just share my screen. Right. Okay, as Becky said, I'm Nikki Pear. I'm the assistant head at Cubitt Town, which is just here on the lovely Isle of Dogs in Tower Hamlets, where I'm also helping to lead the Tower Hamlets RSE Hub, which is a collection of schools working together on RSE, sharing best practice and collaborating. So I'm going to talk about 2 things today. Firstly, about effectively embedding an RSE curriculum using our school Cubitt Town as an example, and then a bit about balancing the demands on teachers when it comes to RSE practice, the other demands that are asked of them. So starting off with effectively embedding an RSE curriculum, I'd echo what was said before. I mean, I believe really we've been successful at Cubitt Town as we've really taken on as a whole school approach, trying to develop a culture of RSE. I would say that it's really hard to kind of lead an RSE if you're a class teacher and to have that impact beyond the 4 walls of your classroom. For us, it's been the idea that actually if we're doing this as a school, we should be taking this on as a whole school. And so what we did, we trained our midday meal supervisors in the RSE of conflict resolution in the playground. We worked with our teaching assistants. We appointed an RSE governor. We've got parents involved. So parents come and recently been helping to run our RSE assemblies with us. And so it's something that all staff were aware of, that all staff could speak of in the same way they would literacy and numeracy and other subjects. So it became really part of the culture. And within that, it was about really thinking we needed to train experts, because at the moment, RSE isn't necessarily part of teacher training programs or NQT programs. So actually, it's often up to schools at the moment and organisations like Voice 21 to train experts in RSE. So I think that was a big part of what we did at Cubitt Town, was making sure people are on these training programs, devoting a lot of inset time to training and building teachers' confidence in providing an RSE curriculum. And to echo something that Sam said earlier on, the idea of not being a cherry on top, but actually something that is permeates throughout the curriculum. This is very much our approach at Cubitt Town. We think that actually RSE should be something that doesn't add to teacher workload necessarily, but becomes more the vehicle that leads learning across the curriculum. And so that takes a lot of planning. It means that RSE really needs to be something that is spoken about from the top, that SLT is really on board with, that becomes part of your school development plan, that is kind of regularly checked in on, and that, as Sam said, is not just there as kind of an add-on, but as something that it's kind of a golden thread that goes throughout your curriculum. And finally, linking to what the work we're doing with the RSE Hub in Tower Hamlets, I think collaboration between schools is great, again, because it's not necessarily the case that you have loads of teachers who have been trained in RSE. The idea that you can work between schools, I think, is crucial. And what we've done in Tower Hamlets is use the expertise we do have, use Voice 21 and the Tower Hamlets Education Partnership to kind of share ideas, share resources, pull the best practice on RSE, so that more teachers and more schools can develop their curriculum together. And that's what's quite exciting about RSE, I think, is that it does have this feel of a bottom-up movement, that schools kind of working together, and that model that we've developed in Tower Hamlets has been really successful, and we've seen kind of practice within the schools develop as a result of that collaboration. So it's a model that I would definitely encourage others to follow. And having done all this, like the impact that we've seen has been has been huge. Visitors that have come in have commented on the difference that they've seen in the 2 years we've been working with Oracy, both in the children's communication skills, but also the impact it's having then on their reading and their writing and their maths and across the curriculum. So it's this idea that it's something that can have an impact not just on spoken language, but more broadly is something that we've seen evidence of at Cubitt Town for sure. So kind of linked to this is the balancing the other demands placed on teachers. It's a $1 million question really. Primary school teachers particularly have so many different subjects they need to teach, and if you suddenly throw another one at them, you can understand there might be some kickback because of the demands that they already have. But again, I think it comes down to the idea of it not being an add-on. It should be part of everyday learning rather than an additional subject that has to be squeezed into an already really busy timetable. Question that comes up a lot from teachers is how you can do that in terms of the evidence that you provide. If you teach an Oracy lesson, how do you evidence that? I think there are two ways of approaching this. One will be to say, take loads of photos or videos, find new ways of evidencing the fact you're talking. I'm not necessarily sure that's the best way. I think the best way to deal with it would be for senior leaders to take a new approach to this and actually say, perhaps it's okay to have more lessons where the impact won't be seen immediately, where you can have lessons, really talk-rich lessons that might not have any writing at the end of it, but kind of safe in the knowledge that the longer-term impact will be there. I know it's a big risk, and it's a risk we took at Cubitt Town for sure. We're accepting that the evidence of lessons may not be what some schools would demand, but the long-term results have definitely shown that it's a risk worth taking. I mean, our SATS results last year, after 18 months of working on Oracy and maybe having fewer written outcomes as a result in each lesson, our SATS results were the best they've ever been in reading, writing and maths. So all this talk-rich kind of input is shown at that point. So I would say take a more sort of common sense approach to the evidence and trust teachers to sort of develop those talk-rich lessons and know that longer term it will have an impact elsewhere. And a bit of a tangent, I think, to finish up, I think the really crucial point is the importance of raising the awareness of Oracy. So through, Voice 21 and other charities and organisations do an amazing job of this, and this inquiry as well is a great place to start. But I think raising the profile that Oracy has is key. So I think if we could get it into more NQT programs and teacher training programs, you'll get a new generation of teachers coming through ready to take that into classrooms. I suppose this is where the bottom-up approach needs to also be twinned with the top-down approach, and I'd implore the DFE and the national curriculum to take on elements of Oracy and really build it up as a priority, because I think there's only so much you can do from the bottom up without acknowledgement from the top of just how important it is. So at the moment, national curriculum doesn't have a huge amount about Oracy, and I'd like to see in the future that change, because I think that could have an enormous impact. And then more school leaders would take it really seriously as a discipline if it's something that's acknowledged from the top as well as the bottom. So I'll leave it on that note. Thanks very much for listening, and I'll pass back to you, Becky.
Thank you, Nikki, and great sort of rallying cry there to the APPG on what's needed to be done from the top down, as you say. And that obviously the inquiry is all about trying to look at the different levers, not just the what teachers in the classroom can do. And from what we've heard today, lots of you are doing lots already, a huge amount happening in terms of the kind of Oracy movement. But what are those things that can be done by government, by the DFE, by those leading and influencing the education sector to be able to give Oracy the status that we think it's deserved. So please do think of those things that would help to make your life easier in terms of pushing the agenda that you care about in Oracy. Okay, so over now to Richard Long, who patiently been waiting. Thank you. Oracy lead at St Michael's Catholic School. Look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Hi, thanks Becky. Hi everyone. So as Becky said, I'm the Oracy lead and English lead practitioner at St Michael's Catholic School in High Wycombe, an all-through school for students from the age of 3 to 18. And we've been in a partnership with Voice 21 for more than 2 years now, focusing on the development of Oracy across the entire school. The first thing I want to say is that whatever we call it, oracy, talk, speaking and listening, I recognise and have learned from the brilliant work that generations of educationalists have done on this aspect of learning up to now, from the likes of the Bullock Report, Robin Alexander, Neil Mercer, Lynn Dawes, John Richmond and his colleagues, the National Literary Trust, and more recently, research I've been involved with the English and Media Centre, Barbara Blyman, and of course, Voice 21. So the first barrier that I want to mention, therefore, is that despite all of this wisdom and expertise and the huge range of historical evidence that talk and listening skills are imperative in someone's learning and education, it's still not managed to filter down to all aspects or all parts of teacher education and practice, which is something Nikki, of course, was just talking about. This was clear in my own school when the first part of our journey with Voice 21 began by exploring with our staff what we understood the term oracy to mean. And we found there was a real lack of clarity and quite different attitudes towards talk that existed across our teaching community. Two of the key resources that supported us in our thinking at this stage were from Voice 21, so the State of Speaking in Our Schools report, which was just fantastic, and of course the oracy framework. If staff were unclear about what oracy meant, then we needed a common language to start discussing it and to be able to develop it. And this, along with some of the key reading from those above that I've mentioned, has helped break down this initial barrier. And I was aware as well that this wouldn't be a quick process either. It's an all too common problem of the new initiative syndrome, whole school approaches that are introduced and fizzle out within a year, which we've all seen too often. And I had a fear that introducing oracy in this way would be seen as one of these. So it's been key to take this steady, to aim to upskill teachers who need the professional learning in order to provide a high quality oracy education for our students. So again, it comes back to educating teachers, and especially, and as Nikki was saying before, at the point of initial teacher training. And I just want to mention as well the oracy benchmark report, which has come out more recently, and how useful and what a brilliant tool this has been for our teachers as we move forward, for teachers reflecting on their oracy provision in the classroom and in learning. And of course, the support of senior leaders in the school who understand why this is so important is also imperative to the success of developing oracy. It must be seen as the responsibility of all teachers, and we've had a supportive senior leadership team who've prioritised this in the school's development plans year on year. We've also been lucky enough to have been allowed a budget that has enabled us to develop with the support of Voice 21, but we recognise that not all schools are. But there is another key barrier as well, which our staff are well aware of, and that's associated with policy, which is devalued and neglected talk. So as we exist in a system where the written word is valued beyond any other form of communication, in the way that the ultimate goal of most students' education is to sit written exams at GCSE, and more exams than ever before, then teachers have faced the pressure to get content taught. And sometimes the quickest way to do this has been to tell learners what they need to know. And we're all well aware of the false dichotomy that I think that's opened up online and in the Twitter sphere in particular between the progressives and the traditionalists. And I think this has been unhelpful in trying to give talk for learning in the classroom the value and place that it deserves. I believe that once schools have got past this stage, it's worth evaluating what talk currently looks like in learning across the curriculum and the provision for it that exists in a school context. One size certainly doesn't fit all. A really helpful part of our learning journey with Voice 21 was a whole school audit of oracy, supported by an oracy expert in joint learning walks across the school. We learned that at primary level, there was lots of talk happening in classrooms amongst students and between teachers and students, but the level of student interaction in class, generally speaking, reduced as we went higher up the school. I don't think this will be a surprise to anyone. But even where there was lots of talk happening, we discussed how it could have been planned for even better, when expectations could have been even clearer, and when explicit teaching of talk skills might have helped develop the learning that was happening further. As Neil Mercer points to in some of his own observations of classroom talk, the IRF, initiate response feedback exchange, is what a large majority of classroom talk can look like, and we found this too. This is where resources such as discussion guidelines, roles in discussion, and the oracy framework provided by Voice 21 have been particularly effective. And again, it comes back to having a common language to be able to think about talk and develop it. And with this, a culture will start to grow, but it takes time. Awareness and understanding need to grow. The profile of oracy needs raising. We need teachers who can champion oracy and its importance across a range of subjects and age groups. We need opportunity to celebrate it, praise it, and reward its development. And we must leave no students behind. There are those students who don't come from rich talk backgrounds, and those students who are allowed to go through their whole school life and day saying nothing. oracy is an imperative, as Alice Stott and Amy Gauntlet's book is so wonderfully titled, and our students have a right to an oracy education, and it shouldn't be left to chance. So where are we now? Well, we've by no means accomplished our goals yet, but we have students who are more aware of the value of talk and its importance in their education and life beyond school. We have students who now know about oracy in greater depth, that there is a physical strand to it, a linguistic one, a cognitive one, and a social and emotional one. We have students who are now able to reflect on these skill areas and think about how they're going to develop them further. We have students who recognise that they benefit from talking to each other about their learning from others' ideas and sharing their own. We have students who are developing their confidence in more formal talk situations, such as giving individual presentations in class or talking in a whole school assembly. And we have students who didn't feel their voice mattered, who are starting to change their view on this. We have teachers who recognise all of the importance of this and are better prepared to support students in this development. And we have a school community that is starting to recognise that developing a better ability to listen to each other may just be one of the most useful life skills we can possess. Thank you for listening.
Well, thank you, Richard. That was great, and lots of bits that I was scribbling down there to quote, both as for the APPG, but more generally, I think some really powerful points about oracy, and covered a huge amount of ground. So thank you. Last but not least, thank you so much everybody for staying to listening. We've had a great audience all the way through, and there's been some amazing points raised, and I think lots of ground covered, and certainly loads of areas that we want to dive deeper on, and I can see that happening in the chat, but also please do take the opportunity to follow up on these. This is not the kind of end of the conversation. We'd hope that we can go further to get more evidence for the inquiry. But last but not least, I want to hand over to Martin, who's been waiting patiently as oracy lead from St William Burroughs Primary School. Over to you, and thank you so much.
Hi, thank you, Becky, and everyone else who spoke before me. Now, I think when you're the last speaker, whether it's a debate or any seminar, you always run into a bit of a difficulty that a lot of things have been said before you, and you do not want to repeat them. So I've been listening very carefully to everything that's been said, taking notes, and what I'll try to do, I had a presentation ready, but I'll try to get rid of it and just speak from heart and try to fill in the gaps and share with you some of the experience from my school as well as from my professional life. I will start with that. Before I joined the Sir William Burroughs in Limehouse about 5 years ago, I worked for about 20 years as a teacher trainer and educator with an international charity that promoted oracy, public speaking, debate, any form of communication internationally. And I had a privilege of working in about 90 countries all over the world, and countries with varied economies, with varied political systems. We worked in countries in transition to democracy, in totalitarian regimes where it was possible, in open democracies, and we work with different target groups, with primary schools, with secondary schools, with the youth sector, both the formal and informal system of education. And the main thing for us back then, we saw communication and oracy not necessarily as an end in itself, but as a means. And we looked at sort of broader social aspect and political aspect and societal aspect of oracy. And that was the one of creating a more open society, societies in which citizens would be engaged in political process through being able to voice their views and opinions. And I kind of brought that with me to a small primary school in Tower Hamlets, where I felt that, you know, I will not give up on my dreams, and I'll try to do it with my year 5, where I've been teaching for the last 5 years. The school that I teach at, it basically mirrors a lot of what's been said, particularly in Nicky's. We're neighbours, and we had a debate in December. The children from our schools had. So I'm not going to go into details on what we do. We do a lot of things that have been already mentioned: assemblies, English speaking board, children working on presentations. And what I would like to share with you is a special curriculum which I developed for year 5 primary, which I think can be easily adapted to secondary context as well. And again, with the view of creating engaged citizens, I looked at certain types of activities that I could spread across the academic year for my year 5 children, and I went for naturally debate because that's where my background is. So children learn pretty quickly how to debate in my class. I'm very lucky. I've got a very open-minded head teacher who supported me in allowing me literally to do 1 hour of that special program a week. So I take 1 hour of my literacy class to do nothing but debating and talking and communicating. But I've also tried other things. I tried, my children in year 5 are very, very interested in politics. I hope I've made them very interested in politics. We look at the news, we discuss what's going on internationally, nationally, in the House of Commons, and we also organize a mock parliamentary debate where children are divided into political parties, and we have a debate on the issue that children choose to debate. We've debated on smoking, we debated on lowering the voting age to 16, and it's a great lesson because we allow children to, in a way, play politicians, but also to show them that there is, or there should be, some value behind politics, that you know, the whole concept of listening to each other, respecting your opponent, being critical listeners in that process is very important. We did Model United Nations, where children chose countries to represent on an international issue, and they researched the position of the researched the country, and then they researched the position of a country on a given issue. We talked about banning hunting at one point internationally, and we also looked at the system of justice, and the children were asked to defend as well as prosecute a character from one of the Greek myths, and they spent quite a lot of time, again, researching the issue and then learning a lot about how to defend as well as prosecute and ask questions in the process and so on. The children love it. I mean, I think, and I love it. This is one of the best lessons in the week that I have in my year 5. I also run a debating society at Sir William Burroughs, which we participate in all kinds of debates in front of the whole school. We invite parents, we go to other schools, as well as we participate in competitions. I get quite a lot of anecdotal evidence from the parents who say things like, my child has become more argumentative, which I think is not necessarily a bad thing. And we've also noticed that one of the things that has changed in our school, particularly in Key Stage 2, when they do more talking in the classroom, is that the children listen to each other a little bit more, and the conflicts that were taking place in the playground are now being resolved through the art of argument and being able to express your position on a given issue rather than just shouting at each other and not being nice to each other. So there's loads of benefits to RSE, and one of the things that I really, really miss, and I hope I will be able to bring it back after the lockdown, is to start engaging children in a debate and discussion about things that we've learned about the society we live in, the world we live in as a result of the pandemic. So I think there's a lot of things happening at a very sort of deep emotional level, at a family level, but there's also things happening that affect the whole world. There will be choices that we will have to make as a society in this country, as well as a global society after this pandemic. We'll have to learn from things and possibly start new things from the beginning. And I think it's very important, again, going back to where I started, that the children and then young people are engaged in that process, that they become active citizens. And I also see, just very quickly, just to finish the presentation, I see an opportunity here for RSE, because one of the things, the common traits through the comments that I've seen is, you know, what can happen, what can we do to get the top interested in RSE. And I think, you you know, since the SATs will not be taking place and the optional SATs are not taking place, they will hopefully the top will realize that there is that the schools can be trusted a little bit more in assessing their children and students. It doesn't have to be all turned into the exam culture that we have in this country, where children are tested. That there is room for assessment which is a little bit different than what we've been used to. And ORC can play a big role in that as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And it was brilliant to bring it back to the thoughts about how this develops young people as citizens now and in the future, because obviously for the purposes of this, we're thinking about the all-party parliamentary group and what it means to have a voice in our democracy and how we can support students to do that. So it's a great way to end it. I'm sure that's in terms of the politicians who are engaged in the APPG, one of the real concerns was about how can we ensure that young people are prepared to be those active, engaged citizens who are able to have the skills of deliberation and to be able to take part really effectively in those democratic discussions that perhaps over recent years we think perhaps needed a little bit of a boost in terms of the quality of discourse and debates. That was a brilliant place to end it. Sorry everybody for running a bit over time. We just had so many teachers that we wanted to hear from and such a great quality of contributions from everybody engaged. I've certainly taken a lot from it, and I know that what's been said today will be really important in helping to inform the all-party parliamentary group's report and recommendations. We've covered a whole range of things and there's lots of work for us to do now. We have been recording it so we can go back and pull out all of those themes that have been raised today. But if you haven't had a chance to say your bit, if you've been listening and had chomping at the bit to have something to say, then please do engage with the APPG. There is time now to do so, and we'd love to have either a written contribution, or if you'd rather do an oral contribution in terms of an audio file or a video, or if you've got something you'd want to share in terms of work that students have done, then we'd love to see that too. We really want to take a whole broad range of evidence to make sure that it is a really rich inquiry, and we will be following up with people further about the ideas that have been raised, and we have captured also all of the points in the chat, and we'll make sure that we're following up on those and ensuring that they form part of the evidence. So thank you so much everybody, and I'm not going to go through all of the points raised because there's just so much, but it was a really ambitious agenda and we got loads and more from it than I think we possibly imagined. So we really appreciate you giving up the time on this very sunny afternoon. We look forward to continuing the conversation and with you engaging with the APPG further, and good luck to everybody and hope to catch up with you all again some point soon. Thank you very much and good evening.